Sounds good.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Automations and Flows webinar today. This will be hosted by Christina Neva. She is a senior Salesforce consultant here at the Fury Group that we are very lucky to have. So Christina, when you're ready, just take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. So as Katie said, my name is Christina Nava. I am a senior consultant here with the Fury Group. I have about 7.5 years of experience using Salesforce. That's both as an end user with Service Cloud, then being an administrator for a couple of different companies, and now as we've said, a senior consultant for the Fury Group. So hopefully what we're going to go over today is going to be extremely helpful for you guys moving forward. What I'm going to attempt to do for the most part is explain the difference between the three main kind of clicks, not code automations, which is workflows, process builders, and flows. From there, I'm going to go into when you might use a flow and when you wouldn't, and then go into some demos. So the demos are going to be fairly simple because we only have 1 hour. And the goal of them is to give you some building blocks so that you can build flows yourself. The great thing about flows is that you really can just build on them. You start with something small and you just add to it and add to it. And each time you go in and you create a new flow or you modify an existing one, you're just adding to your knowledge and you're adding to your repertoire. And pretty soon you're going to look back and you're going to say, wow, I built that. You know, you can go into this not knowing anything because flows can be a little intimidating. But the goal is for you to, finish watching this webinar and be able to say to yourself, I can build that. I can do that. And that's what we're going to work on today. All right, so we're going to start with what the slide says right here, the different types of automations. So workflows are the original automation with Salesforce. They were there, I believe, from the beginning. And it was a way for you to say, if this happens, then do this. It was fairly simplistic, but yet very powerful in the beginning. You could say something like, if this field is changed, go change this other field. And again, it's very powerful. It allowed you to, to automate a lot of the stuff that you were trying to do with Salesforce, and it was an admin's best friend. Well, then Process Builder came along, and Process Builder took things one step further. Once Process Builder came out and it became very established, they stopped improving workflows. And they really suggested that when you could, for existing orgs, for you to eventually move over all of your workflows to Process Builder. At this point in time, workflows only win over Process Builder because you can send an outbound message with workflows that you cannot do with Process Builder. Other than that, Process Builder wins in every other circumstance. You can control your order of operations. So if you have 5 workflows, you can't control which one is going to run first. So if 5 different fields are being updated, or if a field is being updated, then an email is being sent, you can't control that order. Whereas you can with Process Builder. So with Process Builder, you have the nodes going down and it's going to run them in order from top to bottom. The other great thing about Process Builder is that you can call another Process Builder, or you can even call a flow. You cannot call a flow with workflow. By the way, I do know that is very confusing having the word flow in both of those, but it is what it is. Process Builder is also great because you can have more complex criteria. Workflow is just, if this happens, then do this. With Process Builder, you can have, if this happens and this is true and this is not true, I want this thing to happen over here. So you just have that more complex criteria so your automations can be more robust. And the other great thing about Process Builder is you can create a record with it. Again, you cannot do that with workflow. You can update records as well, and not just update the record that started the process builder. You can update a record that is related to that record. So for instance, you have a case that was updated that starts your process builder, where you can actually update something on the contact or the account that's associated with that case. So that gives you a little more power as well. One thing you cannot do with process builder is you can't get user input. It all runs in the background. It's all automated. It's all behind the scenes. So that moves us into flows. Why are flows good? So with flows, you can get user input, and that on the surface is the biggest difference between process builder and flow. You can create really intricate or very simple ways of gathering user input and then doing things in the background with it. The other really great thing with flows is you aren't tied to that original record. So as I said, with process builder, if something happens on a case, you can then update something on the associated contact or account. With flow, if something happens to a case, we can look up a product and do something with that. We can look up an asset. So it does not have to be related, you know, in the object schema. We don't have to have that relation between these two objects. We can actually still go find another record and we can update it. We can create a new record. We can delete records. That is something that you can't do with process builder, is we can delete with a flow. In addition to that, we can perform extremely complex criteria. So whereas process builder built upon your criteria from workflow, flow builds upon it with process builder. So you can do some really complex, interesting, and really intricate things with flows that you cannot do with process builder. All right, so if you have looked at flow in the past, and it was before February of 2019, so about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, flow looked a lot different. So another of the really big differences between flow and process builder is flow is being updated dramatically with every release. So starting with, I think it was spring of 19, just the changes they've made to flow have been astronomical. Even with the winter 21 coming out, the updates they've made have been huge. So for example, I did the same presentation 2 months ago for a user group. I had to go in with a new sandbox org and rebuild them all, just because between the summer release and the winter release, there's been so many changes. So if you looked at it before and you were really intimidated, you know, go look at it again. They're making it in one way simpler to build, but in another way a lot more powerful. I'm not going to get into all the things they've changed, because if you haven't looked at flows in the past, that's not going to make a lot of sense to you. Just know that they have made a lot of changes. All right, so those, again, kind of the big differences with flows. How do you know when to use a flow versus a process builder? I would even say, how do you know when to use it instead of a workflow, but you really shouldn't be using workflows at this point. So when you use a flow, when you want to get user input, if you want to pop up a screen that asks the user for something, it must be a flow. It's the only way to do it. If you want something to run routinely, for example, every day at 6 a.m., do this specific thing, then you're going to want to use a flow to do that. And that's one of the demos we're going to go through in a little while, is setting up something to run automatically. Excuse me. When you want to delete a record, again, you must use a flow for that. Cannot use process builder. If you only want to modify records that meet a specific criteria, you're going to want to use a flow. And what I mean with that is with Process Builder or even with workflow, if something happens, if something happens, a record is changed, we want this to happen to that record. Well, what if we only want it to happen in certain times, certain criteria? What if we want to say, when this case is changed, go look for something else and update it then? So if you're really wanting to specify that criteria, you're going to want to use a flow as well. And one of the last times that I want to talk about when you're going to use a flow is if you want to modify records that aren't related to that original record. So as I mentioned on the last slide, if you kind of picture that object schema in your mind, if you have a case and it is related to an account and a contact. Well, if we want to modify that account or contact, we can use a process builder. Most people are used to it. It's a little less intimidating. That is the first place people go for that kind of thing. But what if there is, on your case, you have a related account, and then from that account, you have related opportunities? Well, your opportunity is not related to your case, but using a flow, we can gather information and look up that opportunity from within the flow and then make a modification to it. So we aren't restricted to just modifying, and that's creating, modifying, or deleting. We're not limited to those records that are just related to the one that started what we're doing. All right, so now that we have a decent understanding of when to use a flow, let's talk about the different types of flows. So when you go and you create a flow, and we'll get into how to exactly do that in a few minutes, you have 5 options to pick from. And this can be a little intimidating when you look at it. It's like, what does it mean? What is the difference between a record trigger flow and a scheduled trigger flow? So the 3 that I have blocked off in red here are the ones that we're going to be demoing. These are the ones that you will most likely be building the most. Excuse me. One moment, please. So a screen flow, what that does is when it starts, it allows you to gather user input. So this is something that is usually started from a button on a record, or even can be embedded in a Lightning page for easy access. A record trigger flow, if you are used to Process Builder, this is going to sound very familiar. So a record trigger flow is launched whenever a record is updated or created. So if you modify a contact, it can trigger this flow to run. So the record trigger flow is launched when something happens to that record. A scheduled trigger flow happens at a specified time and frequency. So for example, every day at 8 a.m., this flow is going to run. Every Sunday at 2 a.m., this flow is going to run. Or we can even say, I want you to run it tomorrow at 8 a.m. and that's it. It can be a one-time thing. So for all of you admins, if you've ever had to, and this is mainly admins, so if you ever have, say, all of your cases or accounts or contacts and you added a new automation that needs to run, or if you added a new field and you need to go update it all at one time, a trick beforehand used to be, you're going to create a process builder that triggers off of a checkbox that says run me, or whatever you want to call it. And then you use data loader to set that checkbox to true for all of them. And then that triggers that new process builder to run. So again, that was kind of a trick that admins learned a long time ago to run a new automation against everything. Well, now you don't need to do that. If you want to go through and if you want to set every opportunity that is more than 6 months old to close lost, their close date is more than 6 months old, you don't have to actually do an export of all your opportunities and use data loader to update to the new status. We can just create a scheduled trigger flow that says, all right, I want you tomorrow at 2 a.m. outside of business hours to find all of my opportunities whose close date is older than 6 months and set them to close lost. That is a really, really good way of using that scheduled trigger flow as a one-time thing. All right, so platform triggered events, I do not use them much personally in what I do, but if a platform event happens, you can trigger a flow to do something else. It's not something we're going to be going over today. And then the last one on here is an auto-launched flow. If you want to create a flow that is called from Process Builder, you can use this one right here. So nothing is triggering it to happen. It is being called by something else. All right, so that being said, we're going to demo the 3 I have here blocked out in red. And we're going to start with the simplest and then go to the most complex. So the simplest is going to be this record triggered flow. What this record triggered flow is going to do is when a new campaign is created, if it is not active, so is active is set to false. If it is not active, we want to set active to true. So basically what this is doing is anytime you create a campaign, it's making sure that it's automatically set to active for you. Now notice this is extremely simple. These individual things are called nodes. There are literally 3, your start and your end, which are standard, and then just one thing. This is all we're doing is just this one thing right here. So I'm going to exit out of my presentation. Oops. And we're actually going to go into Salesforce. Before I start my demo, I did want to talk very briefly about Trailhead. So for those of you who do not know, Trailhead is Salesforce's free training platform. Not only does it have lessons for you to use, you have access to free sandboxes with data in it. So this is what I am using for all of my demos right here. I happen to have one sandbox that I'm going to be using for a super badge. So there was nothing else built in it, but it does have some data. So if you want to go in and just play, you can either create a sandbox in your current production org or go into Trailhead and create a sandbox in here. So that's what we're going to be doing here. So within my sandbox, I'm going to create a very simple flow that sets new campaigns to active. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to setup, type in the word flow, then go to flows right here, and then click on new flow. So this is that screen I showed before, and we know that we want, in this case, a record triggered flow. Whenever a campaign is created, we want this to run. So we're going to click on record trigger flow. Now this is brand new. This is one of the things that came out in winter 21. If you are new to flows, I recommend using this layout here. If it's still not active in your org, you can just use freeform. This auto layout just makes things a little bit cleaner for you. You don't have to drag as many things onto your layout right here. You can just kind of click on this plus sign. So that's what I will be demoing. But if you have any trouble with it later on, I'm actually going to turn this off and show you what it looks like. So on my record triggered flow, the first thing I have to do is I have to choose what object this is going to be triggered off of. So I'm just going to start typing in the word campaign and then click on campaign. Now what I can do is I can say, you know what, you don't have to run this against every single campaign. I only want to run it on ones where active equals false. So notice as I just start typing in, Salesforce is smart enough to start giving me suggestions, things that start with or contain what I'm typing in. So I want to run this on any campaign that is not active. So is active is false. Now I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on this one. By default, it is doing when a record is created, which is what we want. But notice we do have when it's updated, created or updated, or, and again, this is brand new, when a record is deleted. Sidebar, this bottom one is huge. A couple of use cases might be, please email the manager whenever an opportunity is deleted. So we see requests for that quite a bit, and before there was not an easy way to do this, but now there is. So when a record is deleted is now big. The other one is either before the record is saved, I want this to run, or after. If you can run it beforehand, run it before, because it actually saves a little bit of processing time in the background. For something like what we're building right now, it doesn't matter because this is going to run against one thing every now and then, but it can save a lot of time for either more complex flows or flows that touch thousands of records at a time. So click done on this one. So now we have a flow created that is going to run anytime a campaign is created that is not active. So what do we want to do? So we're going to click on this little plus sign and we're going to say assignment. So we're going to change a variable or change a field on this record. So I'm going to say set is active. In the variable, this is going to be where you say what field you want to change. $record, this right here is the record ID of the campaign that was created that this is running against. So I'm going to click on the little arrow and then I'm going to start typing in is active again. So I'm going to set is active to true. And that's all I have to do. I'm done. That's all this flow is. You're going to go in and you're going to save it, give it a pretty unique name. And then activate it. Now I'm not going to activate it right now because I have another one I built that did exactly the same thing and I don't want them stepping on each other's toes. But let me show you how this works now. So I'm going to go into my campaigns, new one, on type. I am not going to check active. Save. And then notice it is automatically active. As simple as that, it's done. Now I realize this may not be something that is applicable to what you want to do. The whole purpose of this was to show you how you can create a flow that is automatically going to do something when a record is updated or created. Okay, so the next one I want to go over is a scheduled flow. What I want this one to do is that every time, go to the right thing, there we go. On someone's birthday, I want to send them an email saying happy birthday. So it's going to be very simple. Every day at 8 a.m., I want you to find me all contacts who have a birthday today and send them a happy birthday email. Well, before we can build our flow, we have to do a little bit of prep work. The first prep work we have to do is we have to create an email template that says happy birthday, and then an email alert. Just like you have to build an email alert to send an email via workflow or to send it via process builder, we're going to create one to send it during flow. So create your email template and your email alert against the contact. So just showing you real quick, we're going to be sending this template, the happy birthday email, to a contact using the email field. The second thing we have to do is we have to know whose birthday it is. So yes, I could know whose birthday is exactly today. That means they were born today, but that's not what I want. I want to find everybody whose birthday matches today's month and day, not year. So to do that, we're going to create a very simple formula field, which is a checkbox. I have it called birthday today. And what this is doing is saying, if their birthday matches today's month and today's day, I want this checkbox to be true. You don't have to have this field on your page layout at all because you really don't need to know. This is just so the flow knows what to run against. So if I look at my list view here, I happen to be showing the birthday and then this flag to show you what's going to happen. So because today is October 14th and we're ignoring the year, our checkbox is set to true. So that's the prep work we have to do. After your prep work, you're going to go in and build your flow. So I'm going to go to my presentation. This is what it's going to look like. Every day at 8 a.m., we're going to call this email alert for any contact who has a birthday today. And again, notice it is extremely simple. So I'm going to go to my flow and I'm going to click on new flow one more time. And this time, instead of being a record triggered flow, we want a scheduled trigger flow because we want it to happen at the same time every day. I'm going to use my auto layout one more time. First thing is I'm going to set my schedule. So starting tomorrow at 8 a.m. And of course, you can set this for whatever time you like. My frequency is going to be daily. So every day at 8 a.m., do something. I'm going to say this is going to run against the contact now notice what I did here. I didn't start typing in the word birthday, even though I could have. I started typing in today. So again, Salesforce is smart enough to search for anything that might match, not starts with. So birthday today is true. So against any contact whose birthday is today, I want the following to be done. I'm going to click my little plus sign here. I'm going to call an action. And up here, I'm going to start typing in, this is my email alert. So whatever your name happens to be, you can just start typing it in. So I'm going to give it a label, send happy birthday email. And then this record ID is very important here. So as I said before, the one reason you might want to run a flow versus a process builder is I can do things against a record that didn't start this. So if I was going to do this in process builder and send it one time, I could just say, call the email alert and we're good to go because Salesforce automatically knows to send the record ID of that record. Well, flow, because it is more robust and more complex, we have to tell it what record ID to use. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to $record and scroll down to ID. Click on that. On the surface, this seems like an extra step. Why do I need to do this? You know, it should just know. But keep in mind, what I could be doing here is every day, I want to find opportunities that are past the close date. Then I want to send an email alert to the record owner's manager. So in that case, I'm actually not using this record ID. I would be able to find in this flow the user ID of that owner's manager. So again, this seems a little complicated because we're doing a very simple thing here. But when you start getting into the more complex ones, you're like, oh, that's why. So just pointing that out there. So we're going to send it to this record ID. And that's it. Sorry about that. You just save it and activate it. So again, not going to do it because I already have one already built, which looks like this, exactly the same. And then the email that gets sent, because I just have a very, very simple email template, looks like this. So that's all you have to do. You can send happy birthday emails. You can send thank you emails. You can do almost anything you want to do, and you can schedule it to happen when you want. All right, the last one to talk about is a lot more complex. And this is going to be a screen flow. What we're going to be doing with this one is from the contact record, we are going to accept a donation from the contact. That is going to create and close an opportunity in the background, and then either automatically send a thank you email or create a task for the for the contact owner to either call or email that contact specifically. So we'll be going through another thank you email, another email alert, and then creating tasks. And this is all going to be done based upon how large the donation is. So I'm not going to start this one from scratch because it would take a little bit too long, but I am going to show you that in your flow, you would click on new flow and then screen flow right here. And that pops you into what looks like what we've been doing before. So I'm going to go over now to the one I've already built. So with this one, because you're not running it against a specific record that was created or updated, and you're not doing it at a specific time and saying, run this against every contact, this is just kind of starting from scratch. So the first thing we have to tell Salesforce is what we're running it against. And that's going to be, we need to get the contact that this was run on. So what I had done is I had clicked this little add element and scrolled down to get record right here. You give it a name. We're going to say, I want you to find the contact whose record ID matches the record that this was started on. So the other two we did automatically knew what this record was. With this one, we're having to go find it. So we're finding the contact whose ID equals this. Then we're going to pop up a very simple screen that says, how much are they donating? Which is a required field, a little red asterisk there. And then give it a description if you want. So very, very simple field right here. The next two create our opportunity. So what you should do here is you should create an assignment element here. We have a variable called SObject donation op. I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. And I am setting on this donation record the name of the record, the name of the opportunity, the amount, description, stage, what account it should be related to, and then its close date. So if I go across here, I see that the name of this opportunity is this weird value. This is a formula, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment as well. The amount is the amount that was put in on the screen. The description is the description that was put in on the screen. Our stage is always going to be closed won. The account is, notice this right here, Salesforce is being smart. We went and got the contact. Remember using the get contact, and we said, all right, find me the contact whose ID equals this record ID. Well, find me that contact's account. So I can transverse going up from our contact to our account. And then our close date is going to be today's date right here. So we're setting all of these fields. From there, we just say, all right, so I want you to create the opportunity whose fields were set on this variable right here. So at this point in time, we have gathered the information and we have created our opportunity. So I'm going to go talk about those formulas real quick. So this right here, whenever you want to create a record, you need to create a variable. So to do that, you click on New Resource. It is going to be a variable. This is an S object. And I'm just going to call it opportunity for right now, so I don't use the same name. Our data type is a record, and it is going to be of the opportunity type. So that's all you have to do. Now, whenever you call this variable, Salesforce knows this is an opportunity record, so I can use all of the fields on this opportunity record variable. The next one we're going to talk about is this formula for the name. So this is new resource, formula, FX, name, data type is text, and then we would insert our formula right here. So we could put in whatever we want, and I'm just going to go back to here. Notice that what I'm doing is I'm saying, from that contact that we pulled before, give me the name of that contact, add the word donation, and then put in the amount that they're donating. So the name of my opportunity is name, donation, and then the amount of their donation. So as I said before, at this point in time, we have created our opportunity. We could have stopped there if we wanted. You know, it's a very simple way to create and close an opportunity. All we did was ask for 2 fields, bam, we're done. But we want to go a step further. We want to thank this person for their donation. But based upon how much they donated is how personalized our thank you is. So to do that, I clicked on my little plus here and I added a decision. So based upon certain criteria, we're going to do something different. So what we're saying here is, if our donation, the amount that you entered in your screen, if it's greater or equal to 25 and less than 500, so if they're donating somewhere between $25 and $500, we want to do X. If it's not, if it's greater than 500, less than or equal to 1,000, we want to do Y. If it is greater than 1,000, we want to do Z. And then kind of our default is going to be less than $25. So we're saying if it's one of these, do something. Otherwise, we know it's less than 25, so we're going to do the default. So from there, Salesforce, this new way, it automatically popped up these 4 branches for me. The old way didn't do that. The new way is awesome, and it does. So I have already created an email alert for sending this thank you email. So all I did was, just like in the happy birthday, I clicked on the plus and I went to action. And I'm sorry, I did not do it that way. I wanted to show you a different way of doing an email. My apologies. What I did is I clicked on plus, action, and then I typed in the word email. And instead of finding an email alert, I did this very simple send email. Notice it looks a lot different. And the other one, I just gave it a name and then a record ID because I'm just doing an email alert. Here, I'm actually saying exactly what I want to send. So I just filled it out with, here's my subject. The email I'm going to send it to is the email on my contact. So get contact email. I found that by starting to type in contact and then email. And then my email body is another formula, which I'll show you in just a moment. So this is another way of sending an email within a flow. You don't just have to do an email alert. So if it is over 500, what we want to do is we want to create a task to send a personalized email instead of just this automatic email that gets sent. So I have this object for a task that I created, just like I did for the opportunity, and I'm setting these fields on it. So the due date is tomorrow. The account ID is the account from the contact. The name on the task is going to be the contact that we found. The description is donation plus the amount. It's assigned to the contact owner. And just to show you real quick, the way I do this is I go contact, start typing in owner, the owner ID. All right, so that's done. And then I create the task just like the way I created the opportunity above, just saying, I want you to create this record using all of the fields that are in this variable. Over here, I'm going to do something extremely similar, but instead of creating an email task, it's going to be a call task. So the subject is different. Everything else is the same. And then this is exactly the same as well. I want you to create my task using all of the fields that are in this variable. If it's less than 25, we did this on the phone, we gave them a verbal thank you and hung up. We're not going to do anything else differently. So from here, we would save it, debug it, then save it, and then activate it. So let me show you how this works, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to call it. So I have already created and activated this flow, and I already added it to this button. So I'm going to click on donation. Here's the two fields that we created. So it's going to be a $50 donation. Click next. So it looks like really nothing happened. Everything happened in the background. But if we go to our tasks, go to all. In the joys of live, as this worked yesterday, and now it's not working. We're going to come back to this in just a moment. I want to show you real quick how I create the button and then a second way to do it as well. So again, if I go back to my contact, I have this donation button. So this is how I did that. From setup, your contact and object manager, you're going to go to buttons, links, and actions. Click on new action. change your action type to flow. And this is going to show you all of your flows that you can call. So this is the one we created. And we're gonna call this create donation. And then you have to add it to your page layout. So open your page layout, go to your lightning actions and see we have create donation right here and drag it in front. And now we have two buttons that do the same thing. The other thing you can do, which is great, is we can go and we can edit our page. And I'm running out of time, so I'm going to fly through this just a little bit. From in here, we're going to grab our flow lightning web component, pull it over to here. Come on, let's put it at the top. And we're going to find the flow that we want. And this is really important, pass the record ID. Save it. Come back. So if you're doing something time after time after time, you can embed it right into your lightning page and you don't have to actually click a button. So this can save you clicks. So now we're going to do a actually, let's make it a $1,500 donation. Next, and we're done. If I go look at my opportunities, oh, it was right there. We can see these opportunities that have been created. So this is the one we just did right here. So we have $1,500, close date was today. There's our name and it's associated with his account. So that's how you do a screen flow and how you can call it from a record. You know, again, what I've shown you right now may not be what you need to build, but this hopefully will give you some building blocks. So the last few things I want to go through are some tips and tricks for building flows. First of all, Google is your friend. I cannot, and this is not exaggeration, I cannot tell you the number of times I Google something on flows and I build them all the time. But in addition to that, as I mentioned before, flows have gone through a lot of changes since spring of 2019, maybe it was summer 2019, I forget which one. So if you're not finding what you need, it's like you're looking at it and it's something from 2, 3, 4 years ago and it looks weird, limit the results in your Google search from February 1st through today. I really do that a lot and it helps restrict what I need to really what's accurate these days. Next, draw it out before you build it. This is not always applicable. It's not always feasible, but piece of paper, whiteboard, lucid chart, whatever, draw it out. I'm going to ask for this from the client. And then depending on that, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Next, build and test one piece at a time. What I mean by that is for this one right here, I would build getting this donation screen first. Just making sure that, all right, I got my information. Then I would build getting my op next and then test that using debug. From there, I would then build this. That way, if something breaks, you have less to go through to try to figure out what it is. There's a lot less confusion, a lot less frustration. Don't forget to debug. Now, I didn't show you that before, so I'm just going to click on this button, debug. This record ID is the ID that you want to run it against. So this is how you find that. I'm going to go to my contact. And up here in my bar, I'm going to double click this. That is your record ID. A lot of people don't know that quick little shortcut. So copy that, paste it in. And now it's just like I'm running against that opportunity. So it's a $100 donation. Over here on the right side, it tells you everything that was done. So I ended with sending a thank you email. If I go to my opportunities, you can see this new one was just created. So debug goes through, it tells you what variables were set, what was created, what happened, and if it fails, it will tell you why. Don't forget to debug. And then the last one here, it sounds a little weird, but find or create your own naming convention and stick with it. So if I click on my flow, notice that all of these start with what I'm doing something. I'm getting my contact. I'm setting fields. I'm creating an opportunity. So if I come back and I look at this in 6 months, 1 year, because this is my naming convention, I know what I'm doing. So I am creating these the same way every time, what I'm doing and what I'm doing it to. So that's how I name my particular elements. How I name my variables over here is every formula starts with FX. So if I'm looking at this, I know by looking at this variable that this is a formula. Okay, great, it's a formula. And I can probably, it'll trigger in my mind what I did with it. So find your naming convention and stick with it. When you're first starting your flows, you're not really going to understand why that's important. But after you've been building them and you open one 6 months to a year later, you're going to thank yourself for doing it. So that's kind of one of my tips and tricks. Last of all, I want to go over some resources. So this first one is Trailhead. Everybody should know and love Trailhead. Talked about it very briefly before. What I have a link to here is Flow Basics. I highly recommend you go through this if you have not yet. Second one I have is just Salesforce's help for flows. I would recommend bookmarking this so you can come to it if necessary. You can probably find it via Google based on what I said before. Google is your friend. That's just taking too long to come up. All right, next one is, this is a really good blog. It goes through a lot of what I've talked about, but since I only had an hour, I had to skim a lot of it. I highly recommend reading through here. Notice this is the way flows looked like before this beta. If I go to here and kind of turn this off, you can see it looks more like that. And I can move things around if I want. So this is a great blog. I recommend you read through this, but you may not need to go back to it again and again. So these first three, notice they don't have the asterisks because they may be a one-time thing. These next two, I continue to use. I'm gonna do this bottom one first. That last tip, which was to find a naming convention and stick with it. This is my naming convention. I didn't create this. This nice gentleman did here, but I found this and I'm like, this is great. I'm going to stick with it. So again, you know, it talks about using verbs and it talks about naming your variables. So I have this one bookmarked in case I haven't, for instance, used a S-object collection in a while. What is that again? Oh yeah, it's S-call. Got it. And then this last one, I cannot give this website enough kudos. This goes through everything. If you are trying to figure out how to build something, come here. What they have may be a little old, but I'm just going to scroll down. So look at how many there are here. I think it's up to like 60-ish. So there's a lot. You may be able to find exactly what you need and follow it. There is zero shame in finding someone who built what you need and copying it. That's how I learned flows. That's how I learned programming way back in the day. That is the best way to learn. So this website is amazing. It'll come through, start with the beginnings and build some really complex stuff. It may be a little bit old. Again, you know, like I've said before multiple times, flow has changed dramatically in the past year and a half. So even something that was built a year ago is potentially out of date. So keep that in mind as you're looking at these. What you're looking at may be a little bit out of date, but the concept is still there. So this is one of my favorite places to go to. So those are my resources. Okay, I've been talking a lot. We've got 4 minutes left. Do you guys have any questions? All right. So I know that we are going to send a copy of this recording and slide deck out to those who attended and those who have signed up and were not able to attend. So thank you all for coming. I do want to go back and reiterate just a few things. What I've shown you is just scratching the surface. It's just to try to get people to not be scared of flows. They can be very intimidating. My goal was to show you something very simple, just to kind of break that ice. So I really, really challenge you, those who have not, create one of those scene boxes in Trailhead. Do exactly what I did. Create a happy birthday email that goes out. Create this campaign. Start with something really simple. Once you start getting in and you build your first one and it's not so intimidating, then you'll start seeing that you can build and build and build. So that was all I had. Katie, did you have anything you want to wrap up with?
Yeah, I think that's everything we've got. Thank you so much for those of you that were able to attend live. And I know Christina linked her information in the last slide. So if you have a specific question, you could reach out to her. Or as always, you can visit us at thefurygroup.com. We have forms that you can fill out so we can get in contact with you. And we'd love to be a resource if you have any additional questions. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, and just have a great day. We'll give you a couple minutes back.